All right, we are live with an emergency podcast. It is day one of free agency. Uh, Free agency hasn't officially started yet, but it's already rolling. Tons and tons of deals out there, and of course, big news for the Patriots. Of course, doesn't involve the Patriots, but not good for the Patriots, but bad for the Patriots. J.C. Jackson is signing a 5-year, $82.5 million contract with the Los Angeles Chargers. Uh, and Keegan, me and you were talking about it off air. I've been very vocal about this since the beginning. They effed this up big time, like big time. And he's not even getting this to me. This contract to me is something that they should have been able to match easily.
Yeah, I mean, so we've been through it enough times where you got to wait like a half hour to see everything come out, guarantees, how much they're getting in the first few years, whatever. So my initial thoughts on it were they absolutely could have afforded that. They chose not to. Waiting for everything to come out, I still feel that way in the end. 40 million guaranteed. I think it's 28 in year one, which is an assload of money. I would assume, down to brass tacks, his decision making process was how much money can I get right now? He was on an undrafted free agent salary,
Right.
throughout 3 years. He got, what was it, $6 million this past year to play. He was on the
I
tender.
think I think less
Um,
actually. I think it was
yeah,
like
so
three and a
it's 4
half.
million for a wide receiver. I would assume it's right around there for a cornerback. So,
Yeah.
um, I would assume his thought process was, let me get as much money as possible in year one. For the Patriots, I know they wouldn't have gone 28 in year one, but if you think at Evan Lazar reported that they offered 17 per. Who knows how many years that was for, but 17 million per. They gave Stephon Gilmore $40 million guaranteed in his contract. That was over the course of 5 years. It was 565. Um, no matter how you splice it, I mean, we're kind of talking in circles because it is so new, but no matter how you divvy things up, they could have afforded to keep him. It was just a matter of they made the decision. They didn't think he was going to be worth that amount of money in year one and two. It's so he got the quick money, and overall, obviously 85, 82 and a half isn't anything to sneeze at, but
Right.
um,
Right.
I believe they could have afforded him. I don't know about you.
No, 100%. And again, it brings me back to the biggest thing for me is that walking out of the 2019 season, Tom Brady leaves you that offseason. You're walking into 2020 with, up until June 28th or June 27th, Jared Stidham's your starting quarterback, right? Like, you're going to stink. You're going to stink. Like, we're in rebuild mode. You just had the defensive player of the year. You have Stephon Gilmore coming off defensive player of the year. He wants more money. Guess what? You gave him money from the 2021 season for Gilmore to give him a pay bump in 2020. J.C. Jackson's contract is running out at the end of 2020. He's a restricted free agent. You know this is coming. You know what's happening. You know you're going to stink in 2020. So what do? Nothing. You just sit there and, we're fine. You know what we should do? Not only are we going to not make a decision on the cornerbacks, we're going to give Joe Thuney the franchise tag. That sounds like a good plan. That's great. Let's give Joe Thuney the freaking franchise tag so that he walks in 2021 and we get absolutely nothing back for him because we spend a ridiculous amount in free agency. So Thuney leaves for nothing. Great, good plan, solid plan all around. And then now Jackson and Gilmore have walked. And again, assuming you don't sign a big name free agent, which they probably won't, but they might. Assuming you don't sign a big time free agent, you get a 3rd round pick in 2023 and a 6th round pick in 2023 total for Stephon Gilmore and JC Jackson. And that is just completely 100% unacceptable. And listen, people might, they'll be fine. Belichick will figure it out. I don't care if he figures it out. Maybe he will figure it out. I still think they'll be fine. Defensively, they'll be okay. They're not going to be like, this isn't, they're not going to go 6-11 this year and be terrible. That's not going to happen. They're going to be fine. But that's not good enough. Like, you had these assets and you blew it. You had all this opportunity to make all this, get assets back for these guys, and you did nothing with it. And you saw it coming. It's not like it snuck up on you. For 2 years, you've done nothing about it. And now it's coming back to bite you in the ass. And it's just completely unacceptable.
Yeah, I tweeted, they mismanaged the entire Gilmore Jackson situation. You I mean, you just touched on it completely there. So I believe they mismanaged it. You obviously believe they mismanaged it. And people are a little, I think people right now, as he's on his way out the door, they're a little sensitive to that, where Bill can't do anything wrong. We've all heard it, but the
Right.
fact of the matter is, if you continue to bring people in, no matter what you bring them in for, a big money deal like Gilmore came in for, or undrafted free agent with a ton to prove, and let's say this: J.C. Jackson wasn't some bum that they signed. The reason he was an undrafted free agent was because he had off the field issues. He was a
Right.
second round pick. It's just no one would touch him with the 10-foot pole. They didn't see the vision. Everybody else knew he was going to be a good football player, as whether or not he could stay out of trouble. So he did. He deserves the money that he got. He's played tremendously, but people are a little bit sensitive to the fact that Bill can't do anything wrong. But like I was saying, whether you bring somebody in for a big money deal like Gilmore, you get an undrafted free agent like Jackson, you can't continue to squeeze them for everything they're worth and then let them walk. I feel like it's a much worse. We talked about how Belichick used to have the better a year too early than too late mentality, where Richard Seymour, he traded. He let Vince Wilfork walk. Down the list, tons of people. I think this is so much worse than that, where it's like, I'm going to get everything I can out of this player, and then I'm just going to let him leave. And I'm going to get the bare minimum for them that I'm allowed to get, which is the 3rd round pick that they might get. Who knows if they go and sign somebody and nullify that. But I think it's just such a bad precedent to set, where it's like, we're going to bring you in. We're going to get everything we can get out of you. And then you're on your own. You can kind of figure it out from there. I just don't think it's a great look. That's a personal view on the situation, but that's how I come out of this stuff, where it's like, what does that say to the players that you're bringing in? I know they don't care about the fans, but what does that say to the fan base?
Right.
What does it say to your coaches, the players on your team? Like, it's a bad look. I don't think it's a good look. That's in the long run, no one cares. My opinion on that. I felt that needed to be said, because it's tough. It's not a good look.
No, you're 100% right. The Seymour situation is a great example. Like, Seymour is a great player, Hall of Fame player, obviously, right? Like, he's a Hall of Famer, and deservedly so. But they traded him for a 1st round pick. Now, that 1st round pick ended up being Nate Solder. He's your starting left tackle for 2 Super Bowl runs, right? And you started at right tackle and played in another Super Bowl as a rookie in 2011. So, you look at it and say, like, hey, they got something back for him. Now, Nate Solder, of course, like, not the best player since he's left here, but he was good and productive here while he was here. Malcolm Butler is an interesting situation, but the Butler situation is very different because they're trying to win a championship still, right? They played in 3 straight Super Bowls. They won in 16. They went back in 17 with Butler on the team. And of course, things disintegrated at the end of the year. But, they're trying to win a championship. They weren't trying to win a championship 2 years ago. They weren't. Like that's what frustrates me the most. 2020 should have been this rebuild year, and instead it wasn't. It was a reset year, which is fine. But you should have gotten stuff. You should have gotten something back for Gilmore. You should have gotten something, or choose between one of the two. Choose between them. And then last offseason, instead of signing him to an RFA deal, say, hey, we're going to give you the big money now. JC, we're going to pay you this offseason. And then pay him. And now you have him locked up, And instead they let it go to the carpet. And that's so frustrating. And like you said, I'm in favor of the year too early as opposed to year too late type of approach. Certainly when you look at it compared to this, like, at some point you can't, it's one thing. I don't mind letting guys play to the end of their contract. Hey, let them play to the end of their contract. They've done it 100 times with McCourty and with Hightower and with other guys. Hey, listen, we love you. We appreciate you. Go out and see what you can get. And then we'll give you something, come back to us at the end of it. That's not what happened here with J.C. Jackson. I mean, Evan Lazar can report whatever he wants about $17 million a year. There's no shot that they offered him $17 million a year. There's no chance, because if they had, this offer gets made, they would have at least been in the ballpark for this offer. This offer is $16.5 million a year. 16.5 a year. That's less than 17 a year. For those of you that aren't good at math, it is Pi Day, by the way. But yeah, I'm sure there's more guaranteed money here, but they could have, figured things out if they really wanted to keep him. And ultimately they just didn't want to, right? Now, whether that's a good decision or a bad decision, my dad's like, oh, he played like crap in the Texans game. Okay. Okay, like what? Yeah, he didn't.
good players aren't allowed to have bad games. So
Right. And that's, and I said things, oh, he got beat by Evans. I think Mike Evans one time skied over him. And I'm like, oh, maybe he's not the number one. But it's like, no, he gets beat. And then, the Ted Ninkovich was talking about, he gets a lot of interceptions because they throw his way. Most number one corners, they don't throw at him. And I'm like, what are we even talking about? So you're saying that they're throwing at him instead of Jalen Mills. That's why he got interceptions. Like, what the hell are we even discussing here? It just makes no sense.
Yeah. I think the annoying thing about kind of the whirlwind of reports that have come out in the past week that are going to come out, it's that they're conflicting, and it's like,
Right.
Obviously somebody's not telling the truth here. Where one person reports, I don't want to name names because that's not what we're here to do. One person reports that they offered him a good chunk of change. Another person reports that they didn't even want him on the team. They were sick of his attitude. It's like, all right, so who's making shit up and who's embellishing, I would say, because I don't think either side's right. I think they wanted to maximize. If I were willing to bet, Bill Belichick had a number in mind. This is what this player is worth. If he wants more, I'm not going to give it to him. I'm going to let him walk. That's how he operates. Personally, do I agree with it? No, but the guy's won 8 Super Bowls, 9 Super Bowls, whatever it is.
Right.
Who am I to tell him how to do business? So that's where we stand on things. I did want to circle back. You said earlier, it was kind of shit or get off the pot situation where you've got a player in 2021 where JC Jackson was ascending at that point. He had one good year as a number 2 cornerback. You're halfway through that year, and at the trade deadline, you don't do anything. You keep Gilmore, you keep JC Jackson. Within a year and a half, they're both gone. So my opinion is, in 2020, when Bill Belichick says this is a reset year, you said it. Those were his exact words. He said it, wherever he said it. He said 2020 was a reset year for us. Now we're willing to spend more money. This was last year when they spent a ton in free agency. If 2020 was a reset year and you had 2 players who, I don't like to call players assets because they're humans, but that's what they are. In the NFL is a business. They're an asset.
Right.
You have 2 assets there and you do nothing to get anything for him. You got a 6th-round pick for Stephon Gilmore, and then we have to wait and see if they get anything for J.C. Jackson, depending on what they do in free agency. I would assume they're going to get something for him because they don't have the money to spend big on a free agent. So why, in a year where you are admitting that you're not competing for a Super Bowl, that you're trying to get better for the future, do you not maximize on the assets that you have on your roster? I don't understand that. And that's where it comes back to shit or get off the pot. You have a decision to make. You've got to make the right decision. It's so important for the future of the franchise, and they made the wrong decision.
Right. Yeah. And really, they made no decision, right? Like that's really what it comes down to, is that they made the wrong move by not choosing. Right. They just said, oh, no, we'll just let things play out. And then Gilmore, which we all knew Gilmore wasn't playing for $7.5 million. Everyone in the world knew that. And they said, no, he'll be fine. He'll come and play. And he's like, oh, no, my hamstring still hurts. Oh, my quad's not feeling good. Okay, great. So now you're not going to play. So instead of riding it out for the full year and saying, yep, great, you'll leave in free agency and we'll get a comp pick from you, we're going to trade you and get nothing in return. They got nothing in return. And again, and I've said this 100 times, I'm going to keep saying it. Next year, the Carolina Panthers are going to get more in a comp pick for Stephon Gilmore than they gave up to get him in a trade. The Carolina Panthers are going to have traded up to get Stephon Gilmore. It's just
in this offseason, they've cut ties with like everybody on the team, Carolina. So essentially, they got a half a year of Stephon Gilmore and picks for nothing. Like they got a half year of Stephon Gilmore and I'd say probably a 4th-round pick is the money that he's going to get that will come back to them. And with all the salary that they've cut, that's almost locked in place to where whatever he signs for, they're going to get a comp pick for. So
because they're not signing anyone.
Right. You got Gilmore for, maybe they trade for Deshaun Watson, whatever. Got Gilmore for a half a year. You got a 4th-round pick for a 6th-round pick. There isn't a team in the world that wouldn't take that, right? So it's just to follow a team and see how they've, especially the cornerback position, kind of mismanaged it in free agency. It's, we had a couple comments here where people just say it's frustrating. I can only imagine how it feels. So And now, by the way, now that J.C. Jackson isn't on the Patriots anymore, it's no more Mr. INT. He sucked his entire time here. He was never good. Going to be a lot of that stuff.
Man, it's frustrating because that's the type of stuff for me where it's like it's just not, it's indefensible, right? It's indefensible, right? And so we got guys like, he's saying, oh, he's not a high head off-field issues. Yeah, we already talked about that, Patrick. Thank you. But, he's not a number one corner. And
if you're looking for it, it's public information. We're not going to talk about it here. It's none of our business. But public information, a Google search will tell you everything you need to know.
He's a number one corner, so people don't throw at him. Oh, except Xavier Howard, who's considered one of the best corners in the NFL. He led the NFL in interceptions in 2020. I forgot about that. No, it doesn't include Xavier Howard, though. I'm sorry. Tre'Davious White was second in the NFL in interceptions in 2019. He's not good. Tre'Davious White stinks. He's bad. Not good. So that's a good point. Stephon Gilmore was tied with him with interceptions. He's not good either. So, guys, don't pay any attention to those guys. Those guys aren't good. Oh, Xavier Howard again was on the list, 2018. Shoot. No. Xavier Howard's not good. He's not. Oh, Darius Slay. No, he's bad too. He led the NFL in 2017. He's another bad player. AJ Boye was a really good player back then. Jordan Poyer, terrible player. A lot of interceptions. Bad player. So it's like, don't give me this crap about, oh, well, these guys aren't good because like they're not, blah, blah, blah. Stop it. Yes, people say, well, Trayvon Diggs isn't good because he got a lot of interceptions. Well, I just don't know about that. I don't know about that. And again, and this is my biggest thing, right? And regardless, like I think to me, the biggest issue I have is this. It's not you're not keeping J.C. Jackson, because then we can go down the road with Malcolm Butler and Asante. So we can go down that road, okay? My issue is that you had 2020, you started off the season with reigning Defensive Player of the Year, Stephon Gilmore, and J.C. Jackson, who currently leads the NFL in interceptions since 2019. You're starting 2022. You're starting 2022 with Jalen Mills as your number one corner. Jalen Mills is your number one corner. That's the only thing that we need to discuss. Now, maybe Shaun Wade all of a sudden plays really well this year, and it's like, oh my God, the Patriots found another guy. Like maybe that happens. But like Jalen Mills is your number one cornerback right now. And we think that that's okay.
And like, we know they're going to make moves. They're going to add a cornerback. Shaun Wade, Jalen Mills, and Joejuan Williams aren't going to be there. There are three outside cornerbacks heading the season. We know that, right? But there was a ready-made decision to be made on J.C. Jackson. You chose not to. And when you go back to, like, if we're going to talk Patriots cornerbacks and not paying them, let's talk all of them, right? So you had Malcolm Butler, who was a really good player in New England. Didn't work out when he left, right? Asante Samuel, same situation. We had somebody bring both of them up. You have a player who works in your system, who's played phenomenally. Both of them were Pro Bowlers in the Patriot system. Didn't get paid, didn't work elsewhere. If you just signed them and kept them in your system where they played well, maybe they continue to play well. Like, I don't think that it was just a flip of a switch and they sucked all of a sudden. It was because they weren't playing in a system that works. And You could go the other way and say, just bring somebody else in and work in that system. Tell me about 2008 through 2013 when they had the worst secondary in the NFL because they couldn't find a good cornerback. That's just the fact that what happened. Like, what the truth is when the Patriots have good cornerbacks in their system, they become great cornerbacks. When they have great cornerbacks, they become elite, top of the line Defensive Player of the Year candidates. That's what the Patriot system is. But when they have bad cornerbacks, you don't just turn into a good cornerback. It's right. You're not able to take that next step because you're not a good football player. That's the truth. You can go back and look at every corner they've had under Belichick, and it lines up. It's let's not just act like the Patriots always make the right decisions and that the players are only good because they play for the Patriots, or that all of a sudden they sucked after. If you take context into this situation, into all of these situations, there are decisions to be made. And most of the time, they've made bad decisions. I would say Malcolm Butler, that was a good decision. They had Stephon Gilmore. J.C. Jackson rose to another level that, they were able to grab him after Malcolm Butler left. They've made right decisions. They've made wrong decisions. This decision, J.C. Jackson leaving, was the wrong decision.
Right. And listen, again, to me, it comes back to the situation that you're in. You want to criticize them for Asante Samuel and letting him go all the way and not – that's fine. Asante Samuel's last year here was 07. I feel like they were trying to win a championship in 07. They were like, hey, we have a chance to win another championship, so let's bring him in. Even if that means we lose him next year, fine. It doesn't matter. We got to try to win with this guy. Malcolm Butler's last year was 2017. They were trying to win again. And so again, it's like, hey, we'll let this guy play all the way out. Now, should they have traded Malcolm Butler before the 2017 season? Probably, since they had just given Stephon Gilmore a massive amount of money. They probably should have traded, Malcolm Butler and gotten something back for him. But they didn't, because they said winning a championship is more important than getting assets back for a player that can help us win this championship. So that's the real issue for me. Okay. And again, we can talk about the defense ultimately is going to be okay. They're going to be fine, right? J.C. Jackson is going to go to L.A. and he's probably going to be pretty good. He's probably not going to be the best cornerback in the league, but he's probably going to be pretty good. Probably not as good as he was here in New England.
In the first place.
Right. Probably not as good as he was here in New England, but he's probably going to be pretty good. But are the Patriots going to really struggle? I don't know. Probably not. They're going to figure it out somehow. But that doesn't mean they didn't screw this up, because you could have been sitting here with a first-round pick for J.C. Jackson or a second-round pick for Stephon Gilmore or both. And so that's the situation where you say, hey, we need wide receivers. You're right. You know what would help us get another wide receiver? An extra first-round pick this year. That would have helped quite a bit to get a wide receiver. But we don't have that because we didn't get anything back for either J.C. Jackson or Stephon Gilmore. And again, maybe they'll get a third-round pick back next year. Maybe, assuming they don't sign anyone this offseason. But I don't know. Maybe Jarvis Landry comes in. Maybe they sign someone. Who knows? Maybe they pay a decent amount of money to DJ Shark. I don't know. Right? But the fact is that they had an opportunity to get stuff back for these guys and didn't. And that is a mistake. And listen, if Bill decided that he doesn't want to pay J.C. Jackson $17 million a year, fine. If that's his decision, I got no problem with that, because he knows his room better than I do. And if he feels like J.C. Jackson isn't worth that money, I'm okay with that decision. But if he knew that and thought that, why the hell did you let it get to this point? Because you were never going to pay him anyways. He was never going to be getting anything remotely close to like less than that. You want to pay him $12 million a year. That wasn't happening. After 2019, that wasn't happening. So it was like, what are we doing here? Just trade him. And they refused to do that. So to me, they screwed it up. However you look at it, they messed it up.
Yeah, I think we got to everything. We're not going to do a Q&A today, unfortunately. Don't have the time. But,
well, actually, the question was about when's the last time, a player was traded for a decent amount. Darius Slay was just traded, wasn't he? Wasn't he just traded for like a fairly high draft pick, I believe? Was he not?
Yeah, I don't know what the compensation was.
I guess third and a fifth. So still not great, but better than nothing. And he had his contract was running out. So third and a fifth for Darius Slay, who's like fine.
Yeah,
I mean, he played in Detroit, so
also,
he was in Detroit.
I believe he's on the back half of 30, or he just turned 30. So 4 years, 5 years older than J.C. Jackson.
Right.
I think we got to everything. I mean, we've been doing this for weeks at this point. It was like the season ended, and we've been talking about J.C. Jackson. So
right.
In a sense, I'm glad it's over. I'm happy for J.C. Jackson. I think kind of the story of his career in New England is a really fun one. He came in, immediately became a team, like a locker room favorite. You had guys like Matthew Slater and Devin McCourty. They loved him as a rookie with that 18 team. So I'm happy for him. You come in as an undrafted free agent with a ton to prove. You did it. You got a ton of money for it. So I'm happy for him. The Chargers got a good player. The AFC West is ridiculous. They've got some of the best players in the NFL on like every team. That defense is going to be super fun to watch. Derwin James, J.C. Jackson, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa. The list goes on and on. But I think we've touched on everything, right? We said all we need.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I will say you mentioned Slater. Obviously, Slater and the other newsworthy stuff today is that Slater and D-Mac are both back on 1-year deals.
Yes,
Brian Hoyer signed a 2-year deal, which, I mean, at this point, Hoyer, I love the Hoyer signing because at this point he's essentially like a coach. And right. So, that's one of the things to me where I look at it and say, do that for Mac, because help Mac out, and help him out with another guy in the locker room with him to help out. I like it. I like it. And so we'll see what ultimately happens. But McCourty, Slater, those are guys that you have to have in the locker room. That are vocal leaders, that are leaders on the field and off the field. So I love having those guys back. We'll see what happens with Hightower and or Bentley. Those probably won't be day one guys anyways. So we'll kind of see where they go.
Multiple days to figure all that stuff out.
You would think.
Yeah. So to wrap up day one, it was Brian Hoyer for 2 years, back to New England. Slater, McCourty for 1 year. James Ferentz, the numbers haven't come back. I don't think anybody cares about what the numbers are, but solid backup, a guy that everybody seems to like. So all 4 of those players are back. J.C. Jackson and Ted Karras signed with the Cincinnati Bengals, 3 years, $18 million.
Love
Deserves
that for
it.
Karras.
I'm happy for him. Yeah. He gets to go to a good offense and be kind of the missing piece because the interior of that offensive line is the worst that I've ever
and they
seen.
They also signed the kid from Tampa as well. The hell is his name?
Alex Kappa.
Alex Kappa. Yep.
So
Karras and
good
Kappa
for Joe
in the
Burrow.
middle there.
A good day for Joe Burrow. I think that'll do it on day one. If anything else comes out big, I hope it doesn't. I've got things to do. But if anything else comes back big, I'll be back. Maybe Pat will be back. It's up to him. But
yeah, we'll be back at some point. I'll be back. I'm around all night. So all day, all night. Not all day, but all night.
Hopefully that's tomorrow at some point. We'll be able to come back and talk about whoever to the Patriots or whoever away from them.
And then we'll be live again. Spags out this week, but we'll be live again on the Patriot Nation podcast on Wednesday night. Probably a little bit later. I got parent-teacher conferences on Wednesday. So it'll probably be a little bit later, probably like 9:30, somewhere around there. But we'll be back for that to kind of do a whole day one wrap, official day one wrap on Wednesday. And then we'll go from there. By the way, no contact with any agents and players before the noon deadline.
That's right.
That first deal came in at 12:02. Like the work to get that deal done in 90 seconds was unbelievably impressive. So really impressed by that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the NFL is so stupid. I hate this sport. I really do. It's the worst. So we'll end on that. The NFL sucks.
Yep.
J.C. Jackson, the Chargers. Bill Belichick can do no wrong.